My eyes snapped open to blinding, sterile light. The hum of machinery droned in my ears, a vibration that pulsed against my skin. I gasped, choking on the stale air as my muscles jolted, stiff and weak from years in stasis. For a moment, all I knew was disorientation, the crushing, panicked weight of being. Then I remembered. Alara, the Voss, the station. Groaning, I pushed against the lid of the stasis pod, feeling the brittle resistance of its mechanism. It creaked open just enough for me to slip my arm out. I pushed harder, using all the strength I could muster, and the lid clanged open. As I crawled out, I saw other pods nearby, each with their own faint glimmers of movement inside. Alara's had already opened. She stood, still breathing hard, steadying herself against the wall. "Alara!" I whispered. My voice was hoarse, like I'd forgotten how to use it. She turned to me, her eyes fierce and alive in a way I hadn't seen even in the dreamscape. It was her, but fully real, breathing and defiant. "Ray," she said, her voice barely a breath. She staggered toward me, and I reached out, pulling her into an embrace before either of us could say anything else. Behind her, more pods were opening. I saw faces I recognized only faintly, like flashes from a half-remembered dream. But here they were, alive, real, standing side by side as we shook off the fog of forced sleep. "How many of us are there?" I asked, my voice low as we glanced around the cramped chamber. The walls gleamed with alien symbols, and the technology surrounding us glowed with the Voss's eerie blue lights. "Dozens here. Hundreds more in stasis throughout the station," Alara answered. "But if we're lucky, we'll be able to wake enough to stage an escape." I nodded, feeling the spark of rebellion ignite fully inside me. The Voss had thought they could keep us frozen, trapped in our own minds, but they hadn't counted on this. They hadn't counted on us fighting back. "Do you have a plan?" I asked, my voice firming as I shook the last remnants of stasis from my mind. Alara nodded. "They'll know something's wrong as soon as the stasis systems fail across multiple sectors. We need to move fast. If we can get to the central control hub, we might be able to trigger a full shutdown on all pods." "Free everyone?" I asked, feeling the weight of what we were about to attempt. The Voss station was immense, and our forces, those of us awake, were few. "Yes, but it won't take long before they try to contain us," Alara warned. She grabbed a metal rod from a panel nearby, her gaze fierce, "and they'll be ruthless." We set off through the narrow, curved corridors, shadows flickering in the dim, cold lights above. Alara took the lead, her movements confident despite the odds. The Voss systems hummed around us, their alien sounds a constant reminder that we were still deep within their domain. As we crept forward, we found other survivors, faces flickering with dawning hope as they realized what was happening. "Everyone needs to arm themselves with anything they can find," Alara instructed. "The control hub is on the upper deck, just a few levels up. We'll need to fight our way there." We hadn't gone far before a group of Voss guards blocked our path, their slim, angular bodies almost insectoid in the alien glow. Their cold eyes met ours, surprise flaring across their faces for only a moment before they raised their weapons. "Humans, return to your stasis pods," one of them said, his voice dispassionate, almost clinical. "Not anymore," I spat, gripping the metal rod tighter. In a coordinated rush, we charged forward. The fight was brutal, our weapons crude against their sleek, alien technology. But anger and desperation surged through us, giving us the strength to fight back. I brought my metal rod down hard on the nearest guard, my muscles screaming as I swung with every ounce of rage I'd stored over years of confinement. Alara was beside me, fierce and unrelenting as she took down another guard, her movements precise and unhesitating. As we moved forward, each corridor was a new battleground, every encounter testing us. More survivors joined us, each face determined, each step adding to the strength of our collective will. Alara's plan was our unifying purpose, the drive that kept us moving forward, step by agonizing step, toward the control hub. Finally, we reached it, a towering door surrounded by Voss symbols, its controls glowing in that familiar, chilling blue light. Alara hurried to the console, her hands deftly maneuvering over the alien interface. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she worked, her focus unwavering. "Can you do it?" I asked, keeping watch as the rest of our ragtag group formed a defensive line behind us. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady, "but the shutdown will alert every Voss on this station. We'll have to move fast after I activate it. Then let's make sure they remember what humanity can do, I said, meeting her eyes, feeling a fierce resolve harden in my chest. With a final press of her fingers, the console flared to life and alarms blared through the station. Pods opened throughout the levels, groggy survivors emerging, blinking in confusion before they found each other and understood what was happening. The VOS system flickered and stuttered under the sudden surge, their controls destabilizing under the unexpected demand. All pods are unlocked, Alara said, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. But we'll need to split up to cover the exits. They'll try to trap us here. I gave her a quick nod. Then let's give them something to fear. The VOS swarmed the corridors as we made our way to the docking bays, pushing forward in a desperate race for freedom. But they hadn't expected resistance on this scale. The stasis-weakened humans grew stronger with each step, turning the VOS's calculated, orderly corridors into chaos. In the confusion, we reached the docking bay, and a group of us slipped inside. The shuttle controls were complex, VOS symbols flashing as we scrambled to get the ship operational. I took the controls, instinctively recalling the long hours of training I'd thought were lost to the years in stasis. Alara worked beside me, her focus unbreakable as she translated the commands with impossible speed. The engines rumbled to life just as VOS soldiers burst into the bay. Alara and I locked eyes, an unspoken promise passing between us. She gave a quick nod, and I turned back to the controls. The shuttle lifted off with a shudder, tearing free of the docking bay as we broke away from the VOS station. Outside, the endless stretch of stars awaited, the vast open freedom of space we dreamed of in the silent darkness of the pods. As the VOS station receded into the distance, I felt a fierce, quiet triumph settle inside me. Earth was gone, and we were far from home, but we were awake, alive, and in this moment, that was everything. I turned to Alara, a rare smile breaking through the grim determination in her eyes. They thought they could keep us under forever, she nodded. They forgot one thing. I raised an eyebrow. What's that? She looked out at the stars, the faintest smile on her lips. They left us just enough space to dream. The darkness pressed down on me like an endless weight, dense and inescapable. It wasn't sleep. I'd known sleep, real sleep, that took you under with the promise of a warm morning. This was different, an emptiness that pressed down on me, trapping me somewhere between alive and dead. But today something felt different. The void wasn't quite as silent. There was a sensation, faint as a whisper, like an echo coming back to me in the dark. The faint feeling persisted, a presence that I couldn't define, but something instinctively human. I concentrated, and slowly the faint static sharpened. It became a trace of a thought, or maybe just the memory of a thought. The familiar feeling steadied and settled in my mind, and I reached out toward it, struggling to remember my own name, fighting the pull of this strange artificial sleep. Ray. Yes, that was my name. Ray Dalmar. And then I heard it, a voice. It was muffled, distant, but unmistakable. Ray Dalmar. I focused on it, desperately pulling every part of myself toward the voice, like reaching for the surface of an endless pool. A woman's face took shape in my mind, appearing in brief, flashing fragments, a pair of fierce eyes, a faint smirk, hair caught in the wind. It was almost real, like seeing a person through fog. Who are you? I managed to whisper, though the words sounded strange, almost like I was thinking them rather than saying them. I'm Alara, she replied, the words finding me somehow. Dr. Alara saith, I don't know if you can hear me, but if you can, we need to find each other. Her voice faded as the fog thickened again. A sinking feeling told me she was drifting away. I couldn't let that happen. I focused harder, digging into my own memories, trying to reach her again. Alara, how are we talking? I managed, pushing my will against the dead weight of the stasis that held me. It's difficult to explain, she said, and her voice was stronger now, clearer, like a guide through the mist. I think we're sharing the same artificial dreamscape. I don't know why, but I started finding people here. They're like faint echoes, people who aren't fully awake. She didn't have to explain what not fully awake meant. I was living it. I began to see more than just her voice in the dreamscape, a flicker of an image. We were standing on the shores of a beach, a memory of Earth itself, maybe. The waves roared, half muted, and a salty wind pushed against me. but it was a memory struggling to stay clear. Even here, our thoughts flickered like failing power. "Where are we?" I asked. "I think we're in some kind of stasis chamber, but on a Voss station far from Earth," Alara said. "I've been in this dream state longer than most. I think it's why I'm able to keep awareness." "Station? But why?" I stopped, hit by a flood of half-formed memories. Earth, the last desperate days as alien ships darkened our sky. We were losing, a spiral of chaos, invasion, devastation. The Voss, a species that had swept across the stars, merciless, cold, and unyielding. I remembered them and felt a rush of anger. They had taken everything from us. Now they'd locked us in these prisons. "They've kept us in stasis," Alara said, as if reading my mind. "They're mining Earth for its last resources. They see us as a dangerous species that needs to be contained." I clenched my fists, the feeling of restraint gnawing at me. But just as the anger rose, it slipped away, buried under the numbness that dragged me back into the darkness. "Stay with me, Ray," Alara said urgently. "It's hard, I know, but we're finding others here, piecing together fragments of memory, focusing on what we lost. We're starting to remember." I clung to her voice, fighting against the pull. "What do we do?" "First, we find each other, and then we find a way out." The darkness thickened and her voice started to fade again. But I didn't let go. I forced myself to focus, grounding myself in the dreamscape, holding on to every thought of Earth I could muster. It hurt, these memories of home, the weight of knowing it might be gone. But the pain kept me sharp. Somehow, it kept me here. "You're stronger than you realize," Alara said softly. "The Voss think they've subdued us, that we're relics they can control. But they've underestimated what we can do, even trapped like this." Something shifted, a surge of memories, faces, laughter, a flood of familiar voices. They were brief but powerful, appearing like sparks in the dark. Alara's voice wavered, and I could feel her trying to hold us together. "There are more people here," she said as the dreamscape shifted. "All of us are drifting, trapped in this half-life. But the connections, somehow they're growing stronger. I think I've found a way to use it, to amplify it." "A way to control the dream?" I asked, the idea forming slowly. "Not exactly," she replied, "but something close. If enough of us can stay aware, we might be able to affect the real world, even from within this dream." The thought hit me like a lightning bolt, jarring me to the core. "You mean escape?" "Yes, but first we'll need to train ourselves to stay here, fully aware. We have to remember what we're fighting for, even in this half-state." Her voice was fading again, and the coldness of stasis threatened to pull me back down. But this time, I didn't slip away. I focused on her face, on the memory of my family, on everything that mattered. My anger burned like a steady flame, breaking through the numbness. The Voss may have stolen my world, but in this dream, I was no longer alone.